How's it going today, guys? This is Tanner with Woodgrain. We are doing yet another installment of an accent wall. This one's gonna be really fun, really unique as far as the design. We're gonna call this Coastal Chevron. So if you've seen Chevron pattern, very popular. We're gonna actually mix it up and do some offset profiles. So it's not gonna be completely consistent like you see a normal Chevron pattern. This might not make sense yet, but follow along, you're gonna see how this turns out. So as far as this wall design goes, there's 5 steps we're gonna follow to execute the look and feel. The first we always do is planning. So essentially identify what profiles, what molding we're gonna be using for the project, decide what the look we wanna go with, and even if you can at this point, decide the color and theme of the room. So obviously you're gonna wanna match with what you have going on within the space, whether it be office or home. You need to make sure that that's gonna fit the aesthetic that you have in the vision. So we have planned and decided that the profiles we're gonna be using are the 3 following profiles: a 254 stop, a 1x4 board, and then a 623 base. So these are the profiles. Obviously you can mix these up as well if you wanna go with something that has more design or curvature. You could kind of decide and make your own choice when it comes to profiles, but this is what we're gonna use today. So that's our first stage. I always like to draw the pattern out to kind of give it a visual. This is very, very rough. The spacing's not there. And then I add in my measurements. So that takes us to the second step of the project. So step number 2, measure your walls and kind of determine where your breaks are gonna be. Since we have 2 different patterns coming together, we are gonna have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. We're gonna have 5 different breaks in the wall, so we can kind of determine where our spacing's at and divide the length of our wall by those 5 vertical boards that are gonna go up and kind of separate the profile. So measure your wall, and that will help you determine how many pieces or how much material you're gonna need for your project. So things do change. Don't get into it and say, well, I decided I'm gonna do this and I'm sticking to it. You might get into it and see that there's issues or that math was incorrect, so be willing to adapt on the fly. The third step of the project is the actual installation. So we're gonna be using a brad nail gun, air compressor, and 18 gauge nails to install the molding. We're gonna be trying to identify studs to make sure that it's secure, and then a miter saw to make our cuts. So beyond that, obviously, we're gonna be having our tape measures, and then speed square can kind of help determine where your angles need to be. So as far as the installation goes, we've determined our angle and kind of where we want the molding to sit. One thing that we drafted up is this jig to make sure that there's consistent spacing. So having this for our, I guess our 90, and then the board's running at 24, so that's kind of our jig, and that's gonna help us just consistent spacing on every single install across the way. So that's gonna save a lot of time, and definitely recommend doing this. Yeah, we're off to the races. We're gonna do this line, and then we're gonna have some measurements to do the counter angle with the different profiles. So it's coming together. 4th step is finishing. So we're gonna be using caulking and putty for the nail holes and any imperfections in the molding, and then our caulking to fill up all our seams so the paint goes in seamlessly and it really just looks professionally done and clean. We are done with our finishing stage. We've sanded, all the prep work's done. Now it's time to do our 5th step, which is painting. So we are gonna go and prep our surface, so it's really important you're masking everything off. This is probably the most timely aspect of painting, but in the long run, you're not gonna get any stain or paint on your carpets. You're not gonna get over paintage on other walls or anything like that. As far as overage goes, so do a good job of masking everything off. It's gonna be a little tricky on these corners because you have to get into the gaps, but you're gonna have to take the time and mask it off. So we're gonna paint this wall and keep things moving. So let's get to it. So we're in the painting stage of the process. We're gonna use a deep charcoal with a hint of green for this specific wall. Obviously, each individual can kind of pick their look and feel and what they're wanting to accomplish, but we're gonna whitewash the rest of the room, so having kind of a deeper, darker color is kind of the tone we wanted to go with specifically. I'm using a foam brush on the moldings right now. It's really difficult. You're not gonna be able to get a roller in here, to be honest, just because there's so many crevices. Foam brushes I like just the fact that they absorb pretty well. You can kind of get in the crevices and get in these hard to reach angles. This is a very difficult wall to paint, to be honest. If you have a sprayer, I would suggest using a sprayer. We're probably gonna have to do 2 coats on here, so I'm gonna do kind of just testing it out to see how a brush is taking it, and I think we're gonna go back and spray this, to be honest, because if not, this is gonna be a very tedious project, but we're gonna definitely need 2 coats as well, because this is a pretty dark, going from light to dark. The other thing I would suggest when you are painting is going with the grain of the wood. So if it's a vertical, 35-degree angle like this, paint with the direction of the wood. It's gonna look better long term. It's gonna come out finished better. The other thing I would say in regards to painting with a brush, since there's so many moldings and cracks, you're gonna get a lot of bleed. So when you push your brush into the wall, typically you're gonna see drips of paint come off. You just wanna make sure that the face of the molding aren't holding those drips, so you get a better finish. So keep that in mind, take your time, and we'll keep you posted. Guys, thanks for following along. I hope this video is helpful. For all things millwork and doors, follow us at We Are Woodgrain, and stay tuned for more inspiration on future accent walls and creative design.